the hidden war between who we are and who we pretend to be. We all lie. That's not a controversial statement anymore. But what's far more terrifying and far more interesting is this: we lie to ourselves. Not by accident, not occasionally, but constantly. And not because we're weak, but because we're human. That's what Freud wanted us to understand. He didn't just shatter the illusion that we're rational beings. He revealed something darker, something far more uncomfortable, that the human mind is at war with itself. That deep inside us is a hidden world, a world of urges, fears, traumas, and desires that we bury, deny, and distort, not to deceive others, but to protect ourselves from ourselves. So why do we love lying to ourselves? Why do we cling to these illusions even when they hurt us? Why does the truth feel so dangerous?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
It starts with a simple, brutal fact: the truth about ourselves is almost always too much to bear. Think about it. If you really looked at your motivations, your resentment, your jealousy, your insecurity, your secret cravings without any filters, how long could you stare before flinching? Freud believed that the conscious mind is like a tiny island floating on a massive, stormy ocean called the unconscious. And that ocean is where the real stuff lives. Your suppressed memories, your repressed desires, your unresolved fears. But here's the twist: your mind doesn't want you to see that ocean. It wants you to believe the island is all there is. Why? Because the truth threatens the identity you've built. And this is where the real philosophical dilemma kicks in. You're not just lying to protect your feelings. You're lying because you've built an entire self, a persona, a mask, a performance on top of those lies. You've convinced yourself that you're a good person, that you mean well, that your choices are logical, that your failures are external. And if one of those lies begins to unravel, the whole performance starts to collapse. So what do? We double down, we rationalize, we distract ourselves, we project. We find someone to blame, we avoid silence, we scroll, we drink, we work, we spiritualize. All of it is fueled by the same dark engine, the fear of looking inward and seeing something we hate. But what if we're not supposed to hate it? Freud's genius wasn't just in uncovering the unconscious. It was in showing that the parts of ourselves we reject, the selfish parts, the angry parts, the insecure parts, aren't evil. They're human. And they don't go away just because we ignore them. In fact, the more we repress them, the more they control us from the shadows. That's the paradox. The more we lie to ourselves to feel safe, the more power we give to the very forces we're trying to escape. Let's get personal for a moment. Have you ever told yourself a story about your life, your relationship, your job, your purpose that deep down you knew wasn't true? Maybe you said, "I'm happy," but your body felt numb. Or you said, "I'm doing this for others," when really you were afraid of failing at what you actually wanted. That moment, that tiny flicker of inner conflict, is the beginning of self-awareness. And it's also the moment most people run from. Because facing it means confronting a terrifying question: what if the version of me I've been performing isn't real? And that's not just a psychological question. It's spiritual, existential. Because if your identity is built on lies, on repression, denial, and fear, then what does it mean to be you? Is there something deeper underneath the performance? And if so, what is it? Freud believed we all live with a divided self. There's the ego, our conscious self-image, the version we show the world. Then there's the ID, the primal, instinctual drive that wants, craves, hungers. And then there's the superego, our internalized parent, the voice of guilt, shame, morality. These parts are constantly fighting. And in that war, we lie to ourselves to keep the peace. We deny the ID because we fear the superego's judgment. We inflate the ego because we can't stand the fragility of our real self. We pretend to be good because we're afraid of being exposed as flawed, broken, or worst of all, ordinary. But here's the twist Freud offers us. The real threat isn't the ID. It's the suppression of the ID. When we deny what we want, what we fear, what we feel, those impulses don't disappear. They mutate. They emerge as anxiety, as depression, as addiction, as projection, and as compulsive perfectionism, as self-sabotage. So the very lies we tell to protect ourselves end up hurting us the most. So now we arrive at a deeper question. What is the cost of lying to yourself? Is it peace? Is it authenticity? Is it connection? Because when we lie to ourselves, we don't just lose touch with our truth, we lose touch with others. We can't be loved if we're not being real. We can't be seen if we're hiding behind a mask. And we can't grow if we're clinging to a version of ourselves that doesn't exist. That's why Freud's work still matters. He wasn't trying to make us comfortable. He was trying to wake us up, to make us see that the journey to wholeness doesn't start with affirmation. It starts with honesty, not the kind you post on social media. The kind that happens at 2 a.m. in the quiet when you finally admit something you've been avoiding for years. So let me ask you something deeply, honestly. What truth about yourself are you most afraid to admit? Not to your friends, not to your therapist, to yourself. Because that's the doorway. And the key is already in your hand. The mask and the monster, why we create false selves to survive the truth. We all wear one. No matter how real we claim to be, there's always a layer of performance, something carefully constructed to protect us from the unbearable weight of being fully exposed. Freud called this the ego, our conscious identity, our sense of self. But here's what few people understand. The ego isn't who we are. It's who we think we need to be to survive. It's a mask sculpted over time from every expectation we've absorbed, every trauma we've endured, every message we've internalized about what makes us acceptable, valuable, lovable. And underneath that mask, the monster. At least that's how it feels. The parts we hide. The parts we've judged. The parts we've exiled to the basement of our psyche. Freud didn't believe we were monsters in the moral sense, but he knew that we all carry within us a raw, unruly energy, the ID that doesn't care about politeness, productivity, or public approval. It just wants. It wants pleasure, power, dominance, affection, chaos, revenge. And the problem isn't that we have these urges. The problem is that we're told we shouldn't. So we disown them. We build a false self, a curated version of ourselves that looks respectable, admirable, good. We become the nice guy, the responsible daughter, the driven achiever, the selfless friend. And we wear that mask so long, so convincingly, that we forget it's not our face. We convince ourselves that we are this person, even when it hurts. Because the alternative, facing the parts of ourselves we've rejected, feels like death. But here's the paradox. The more tightly we cling to the false self, the more power we give to the monster we're trying to suppress. That's Freud's insight. The unconscious doesn't vanish when ignored. It festers, and eventually it leaks. In anger we can't explain, in relationships we keep sabotaging, in dreams that disturb us, in sudden feelings of emptiness that make no sense, because on paper we're fine. Have you ever had a moment where you did something totally out of character, lashed out, ghosted someone, made a reckless decision, and afterward thought, where did that come from? That's the monster knocking. That's the unconscious reminding you, you can't hide me forever. So why do we love lying to ourselves? Because it buys us time. It lets us avoid the confrontation. It allows us to maintain the illusion that we are in control, that we are good, that we are immune to the parts of human nature we judge in others. We point fingers at the selfish, the angry, the weak, and we say, not me. But Freud would say, that's projection. You hate in others what you've disowned in yourself. And this brings us to a terrifying but liberating truth. The self is not a polished statue. It's a battlefield. A place where conflicting desires, fears, and identities collide. And if you're not aware of that battle, you're not winning it. You're being ruled by forces you refuse to see. Here's something most people never consider. Lying to yourself is not a failure of morality. It's a survival strategy, especially in childhood, when we're too fragile to face certain truths. When love feels conditional, when safety is threatened, when being ourselves leads to rejection, we adapt. We split, we hide, we become whatever we need to be to stay connected, to avoid pain. And that adaptation becomes our identity. But what kept you safe then is what's keeping you stuck now. Because here's the thing, your false self can succeed. It can build a career. It can get applause. It can win awards. But it can't feel. It can't love. It can't connect to anything real. And eventually that disconnection becomes unbearable. We wake up one day surrounded by everything we were told would make us happy, and we feel nothing. Because we've built a life around someone who doesn't exist. So let me ask you, what version of yourself have you created to feel safe? And deeper still, what part of you had to die so that version could live? That's not just a psychological question. It's a spiritual one. Because to reclaim your wholeness, you have to face the monster. You have to descend into your own darkness, not to destroy it, but to integrate it. Because the monster isn't evil, it's wounded. It's the part of you that wasn't allowed to speak, wasn't allowed to feel, wasn't allowed to exist. And now, after years of silence, it's clawing its way back to be seen. And here's the beautiful, brutal truth. The more you face the monster, the more human you become. Because in the end, the mask doesn't protect you. It imprisons you.